So this is going to be a very foundational video in that what I'm going to cover today is the initial first step that I think anybody should take when attempting to outline or begin their novel. I mentioned in my video yesterday about plot that the issue I find with plot is simply that people tend to focus too much on the specific events of a story rather than starting with understanding their characters first. So in this one, I'm going to go over where I think someone should begin their story. And so when you have the initial idea of what you want to write, this is where I believe you should start, which is coming up with what your character's desire and motivations are. So to begin, all characters in stories have two sorts of desires. They have both the surface level desire and then what I would call the what do they really want. All right. This is where I would tell somebody to begin their story. So whatever idea you might have for a tale or what you want to do, figuring these things out first, both the surface level and the subconscious deeper desires, this will allow you to build your story and plot around something that's going to make sense and that is going to wrap the entire thing up very nicely. If you find maybe that sometimes your stories don't always work out well, it's could be because of the fact that you have characters whose desires are not fully fleshed out. They're maybe inconsistent, or you haven't built a story that matches what they are doing. Their desires and what they're going after are somehow incompatible. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and give a quick example of a character with both their surface level desires and their deeper desires expressed. So everyone, I'm sure, has read Harry Potter, is familiar with it. I'm going to reference the very first book. In the first book, the character Harry Potter has a surface level desire, which is, in essence, find the Sorcerer's Stone, right? So survive his first year at Hogwarts and get the Sorcerer's Stone. But now, what's the deeper desire? If you were to ask Harry, what do you really want? Well, what he really wants is a family, right? And the plot of the first book ties into both these. You obviously see the element of this, of wanting to find the Sorcerer's Stone, of wanting to stop whoever is trying to steal it, and save the day in a sense. But now the deeper want of him wanting a family, you see this first. Obviously it's kind of peppered throughout the story, but you see a very clear example where he looks in. I don't remember the name of the mirror there, but there's a mirror basically where he looks in the mirror and he sees his parents. And it's the first kind of time where, the mirror itself basically is presented as something that actually shows you what you deep down truly want. So right there, you have built into the story a very open display of what Harry truly desires. Now, what happens is at the very end of the first book, he's given an offer by Voldemort, right at the very end, to, in essence, join him, and I will give you your family back. Obviously, Harry has to wrestle with this. It doesn't seem like in the book it's not a very long kind of grappling. It doesn't take up much page space, but he has to grapple this momentarily, and then concludes that Voldemort's lying, and that he, the idea of doing the right thing, of saving the day, trumps his desire to basically have his family. That right there is a plot in a story that's been plotted out based around a character's both surface level and deeper desire. And so when I tell people to first establish these desires, that's what I would encourage you to do, is to figure out what these desires are first for your character, and then build a plot and tie both into it as the story goes along. And that's it. It's not a very difficult concept. It's not one that requires a lot of knowledge or study, but it is the most foundational thing you need to do, and it requires a lot of time. I'd say at least probably a few days, I think, for most people, to just sit down and think out, okay, what does my character want and what do they truly desire? And then once you have established that, once you have figured that out, it becomes a lot easier to plot your story, and it makes the story connect in a way that's going to make sense. It's going to prevent a lot of issues where down the line you don't want to be the person that hasn't figured out what your character wants, and you've written, your first, second draft, gone through it, and then realized, oh crap, none of this correlates at all. So I would start here at the beginning. I would encourage you to begin with understanding your character first, what they desire, and then building a plot after that. There are exercises to do to kind of figure out what your character wants and then how to build the plot. Because once you know what your character wants, constructing the plot does require a little bit of finesse in terms of like figuring out, okay, what do they want? What's the impediment to them getting that object? What are there deeper realizations? Do they reevaluate their views? So there are certain things that later on, there's a bit more finesse to it than that. But at the very base level, what you need to start with first is knowing what your character is, and then moving on from there.